Time to lift off with Harrier attack, vertically. Harrier Attack is a 1983 game by Somerset-based software house Durrell. It's still around, but they produce accounting software apparently, or software for businesses. 1983. Started off life on the Oric, and thank you to Matthew Scott, who captured some of the original game from his Oric. And this is capture from his CRT. In Harrier Attack, you fly a Harrier on a bombing raid over an island and then have to return back to your base. On the original version, and all versions apart from the C64, in fact, the map wraps around, so you only fly from left to right. You can see it moves along pretty well on the Oric. And this is the first computer game I ever saw, I think, on my friend's CPC 464. And it looked so realistic at the time. And being the first game I ever played, I thought I'd better play the original version, even if it is under emulation. So here we are on the Oric. And it's very similar to the CPC version that we will see, except for a couple of points. Firstly, your aircraft now seems to fire some kind of bullets out the front. They're marked as rockets. And then the bombs fall down diagonally. It was often thought this game originated on Spectrum, but the Spectrum programmer said no. They were given a copy of the Oric version and used that as the basis for the Spectrum version of the game. The guns on the ground do fire at you, and if they fire in the right direction, you won't know about it, you'll just die, basically. Taking some getting used to here on the Oric, and there's 5 difficulty levels, by the way. You have fuel, you have a limited amount of bombs, and a limited amount of rockets as well. And you can adjust your speed. You need to fly fast enough to get over the island before your fuel runs out. And my fuel is already running out. As I approach the city, I need to bomb the city. But there's still aircraft in the sky that you need to... Actually, I think it's supposed to be an enemy base, except on some versions it looks more like a city. These bombs aren't very good on the Oric. And will I get enough fuel to land back at the carrier? Here's the carrier. And we just come down to land to complete the game. Again, sorry this is under emulation, but I thought it was important to show this original... no, I've run out of fuel. I thought it was important to show this original version of the game because it was so influential for me, the first computer game I ever played. And here we are, and saw. Here we are on the Amstrad version, published by Amsoft, still coded by Durrell. Came out the following year, 1984. One of the first games ever produced for the CPC 464. In fact, my memory says this might actually be the very first game delivered back to Amstrad. Don't quote me on that, but I think it might be. So this is the noise and kind of feel of the game that I'm used to. Better status display down the bottom there. There you go, I'm going to get ambitious here, and I've shot the enemy missile and I've bombed that ship pretty spectacularly. Oh. And the scrolling is criticised a bit on the Amstrad. It's a little bit jerky as we move on, as I forwarded it on, as I arrive at the city. And notice the bombs work differently on the Amstrad version. They go straight down as bombs should. And your missiles are in fact rockets that you can kind of guide because they travel with the aircraft at the same time. Ideally I want to lose all my bombs and keep moving fast enough that I'm not going to be blown out the sky by the enemy rocket fire. Basically dots you appear in the sky of where the enemies have fired. You won't know. You get no kind of, ooh, ambitious there. Firing a rocket inside the building. Get out the way there. Oh! What hit me there? What hit me there? I've no idea what hit me there. There were no enemy guns around. I didn't think... That seems mighty unfair. Got a high score, 63 hits, which I like. It shows you how many hits you got and a high score as well. And Harrier Attack is a high score game. Let's try that again, because I want to land it back on the Harrier. Back over the city. Right, this time I'm going to keep higher up and keep out the way. Though what hit me then, but down to about a quart of fuel as I come back towards the carrier. Don't be clever and bomb the carrier when you take off at the start, because guess what? It won't be there and you'll just end up flying around the map again and then you'll run out of fuel. And down we go. And now we're on level 2 of 5. So we wait to take off again. We've been refueled and restocked with bombs and rockets. And off we go. A little bit faster and the enemies are a little bit more aggressive and the homing missiles come for you a little bit more aggressively. So I'm still going to bomb him like that with my missile. That's cheeky. Oh, and the landscape will get larger as well. I say larger, there'll be more hills. Back over the city. And a bombing we go. City, army base. I don't know what you're supposed to be bombing. All I know is I'm bombing it. Oh! That was mighty unfair again. I'm getting to the feeling that having an attack on the CPC could be a little bit unfair. I know you're not going to get any war. Well, I suppose there are enemy guns around. Dunno, but there we go. Over to the Spectrum version, the second version to be produced in 1983. Oh, because it's a bit faster than CPC already. No in-flight noise. Oh, I accidentally ejected. Yes, the controls are particularly horrific. You have to use it's 8, 9, 0 and so on up there. So you've got to do left, right, up, down on keys that are basically next to each other from left to right. And the eject button is next to the fire button, which has obvious problems. Especially because you've got 2 fire buttons as well, one for rockets, one for bombs. On joystick on the Amstrad, the bombs are on the space bar and then rockets are on the fire button on the joystick. Lacks the atmosphere of the CPC because, of course, there's no engine noises as you go along. I know they sound a bit pathetic on the Amstrad, but even so, it really does add something to it, especially with the noises of the... I've got some noises of the enemies firing at me now anyway. One thing to watch out for is the fighter aircraft, the enemy aircraft getting behind the clouds. Because they might suddenly come up from behind them or wherever, so you've got to keep an eye out for that. Forwarded it on, and here we are on the city again. Get down low, trying to avoid the flak so I don't get hit. It's a bit of a trade-off, you don't want to get blown out the sky. And one thing I've noticed on this version is there can be guns on top of the buildings as well. Nice flash of colour. It's all very basic and character-based. Scrolling 8x8 pixels at a time, as it does on the Amstrad. Oh, I've accidentally ejected! Oh! Oh, what a dreadful keyboard layout. Why have on the Amstrad the eject button's escape? It's miles away from everything. On the Spectrum, no. And this is level 5, and this is how fast it goes on level 5 on the Spectrum. And look how high up the landscape is. You've got very little room to manoeuvre in. Oh. Oh dear. I don't know if that's supposed to be speech or just noise or something when it flashes the border. I don't know. Over to the C64. Loading this on the Kung Fu Flash as provided by the Futurals 8-bit. Allows you to load disk images into your C64 easily for a very reasonable price. I may have got the review out for that by the time you've seen this. I may not. Again, 1 to 5 skill level. And very atmospheric. Oh, I've accidentally bombed my ship. Shouldn't have done that. Lovely and smooth on the C64. Lovely and smooth. And yes, you can go both ways. Because on this version, the map doesn't wrap round. You literally do fly to the base and have to fly out again. Which is really nice. Really, really fast and smooth. Not as detailed graphics, but this is a nice touch. You do have to watch out though for the speed the enemy flak comes at you again like that. And we might see some enemy aircraft. Actually, on level 1 you don't get enemy aircraft on the C-64. You do on later levels, but do watch out for rockets that will chase you. And this is a proper... Oh, yeah. It is a proper enemy army base on the C-64. Let's try again. You want to preserve your bombs to get to the base, because that's where the score is. We're over some kind of forest now. Should be away from the enemy, so I'm going to flip round in a second. Oh, there was a rocket behind me. I suspected there might be, but there's no warning that's there. And also, just from there, you can see rockets firing out of the tree. Oh, trees. Very quick reaction game on the 64. It's a very different feel. It's a very different type of game. On level 2... Oh, I've blown up. I was going to say, on level 2 onwards you get other planes. And you get a block at the side of the screen warning you there's another plane there. And they don't have to move fast. And they're quite difficult to avoid. It feels more like Defender on the 64. Yeah, I'm just hanging around to see another plane comes up. Oh, rocket! And those rockets really are vicious as well, especially because you don't have any way to deflect that. Those rockets, you can't drop decoys or something like that. The rockets just will come for you. Harrier Attack. I regard it as an all-time classic on the CPC. Very nostalgic memories of it. The Auric version is very interesting. I've never ever seen it before. And it plays pretty well. It's a shame those bombs don't drop down vertically. But you can see where the genesis of the CPC and Spectrum versions comes from. Really interesting to be able to play it and show it to you. CPC version, I'm very nostalgic about it. It's a great high score game, it still is. It's very, very basic, but it still plays pretty well. You're not going to get much more than 10 minutes of entertainment out of it. But in that initial batch of Amsoft games and the ones given away free with the 464 later on, this, along with Oh Mummy, will still give you a little bit of entertainment. Specky version is colourful, lacks a little bit of the atmosphere of the CPC version, but does make up for it in sheer speed. C64 version is interesting because it's a slightly different game. It reminds me of Defender, and of course the later double title, Operation Hormuz. Sadly, the enemy planes and rockets are just a little bit too unforgiving for the game to be properly fun, but it's still nice to see it alongside these other versions of the game. Harrier Attack isn't a standout classic. Some people describe it as a bit like a Game & Watch handheld game, but I've enjoyed playing it today, and I suggest, hey, give it a check out for at least 10 minutes of reasonable fun.